Now let us discuss some of the notable poets from the Jacobean era. There were quite a few notable poets from this time period who were writing some really good poetry. And who were these poets? The metaphysical poets. With the end of the Elizabethan era, the lyrical poetry and sonnet style had grown old and outdated. In the 17th century, then came poets who discarded this artificiality of the Elizabethan court poetry and started writing poetry by applying the phenomena of science to it. The style was now difficult, intellectual, with conceits taken from totally unrelated elements. These metaphysical school of poets used wit and imagery of unusual kind into their poetry. There was a playful use of language, puns and paradoxes, and the imagery was vivid and totally unexpected. For example, in one of the Donne's poems, A Valediction Forbidding Morning, the lovers are compared to the two legs of the compass. The poet says, if they be two, they are two so, as stiff twin compasses are two. Thy soul, the fixed foot, makes no show to move, but doth if the other so. So here Donne compares the two lovers to the two legs of a compass, which is totally a scientific term. The major poets under this category were called metaphysical school of poets. Johnson has called them metaphysical poets in his book Life of Cowley. So who were these metaphysical poets and how many poets are included in this category? There are total 6 poets which are included under the category of metaphysical school of poetry. The first is John Donne, second is Andrew Marvell, third is Cowley, then we have Herbert, then we have Croshaw and Henry Vaughan. Let us discuss these poets one by one. The first one is John Donne. Donne's poems are under 4 major categories. The first category is his love poems, which includes poems like The Sun Rising, The Canonization, A Valediction Forbidding Morning, etc. Then comes his another category called as the metaphysical poems, which includes poems like The Flea, The Bubble, The Broken Heart, The Dream, and Holy Sonnet number 10. The third category was called as his religious poems. So he was also into writing some religious poems, and the most popular of these were the Holy Sonnets number 1, Holy Sonnet number 5, Holy Sonnet number 7, and A Hymn to God the Father, A Hymn to God in My Sickness. Fourth category under which John Donne wrote was the satirical poems, which includes poems like The Progress of the Soul, written in 1633. So there is only one poem under the satirical poems category, that is The Progress of the Soul. Other important poems written by John Donne, and which the title of these poems you must remember are The Good Morrow, To His Mistress Going to Bed, etc. The second important poet of the metaphysical school of poetry is Andrew Marvell, who is best known for his only poem called as To His Coy Mistress. He wrote many poems, but this one gained special recognition and it is still remembered. Thirdly, we have Abraham Cowley. He was the inventor of the irregular odes, inspired from the odes of the classical poet Pindar, which I discussed in the classical period. Then comes other poets under this category who were not only metaphysical but also religious poets. So they were writing both the kinds of poetry, metaphysical as well as religious. The first one is George Herbert. He had a deep influence of Donne on his poetry, but unlike Donne, he wasn't against Elizabethan style of poetry. His famous poems are The Temple, which is in the sonnet style. Fifth poet under this metaphysical category is Henry Vaughan. He is famous for his poem Silex Scantilians, which was inspired from Herbert's The Temple. The sixth and the last metaphysical poet is Richard Croshaw. Croshaw is famous for his poems like Hymn to Saint Teresa and The Flaming Heart. Then there were another group of poets who fall under the category of Cavalier poets, who sang and wrote poetry during the rule of Charles I. These poets believed in the Renaissance man who was a lover, a soldier, a gallant, and a musician, and a poet all at once. The main poets of this group include Robert Herrick, Richard Lovelace, Thomas Carew, Sir John Suckling. Why were these called the Cavalier poets? Because they wrote poetry during the Caroline era, that is during the reign of Charles I. These poets followed Ben Jonson for his poetic style. Though sometimes John Donne is also considered as cavalier poet because he also wrote religious poems like hymns to God and holy sonnets, but majorly is regarded as a metaphysical poet because this is the kind of poetry which made him popular, made him famous. There are certain notable prose writers as well from the Jacobean to the Caroline age, which we must know from the exam point of view, and these are first George Chapman. Chapman was another English poet, translator, and also a playwright. He is best known for his translation of Homer's works like Odyssey and Iliad. So he translated the classics into English. Chapman influenced Shakespeare, John Milton, and other writers, and he contributed to the development of English poetry and translation. So he became famous because of his translation of the classics. Then comes Francis Bacon. Francis Bacon had been called the father of empiricism or the scientific reasoning and study. He believed in scientific knowledge. His major works are The Advancement of Learning, published in 1605, which is a philosophical treatise, and then The New Atlantis, which is a utopian novel written in 1627. Then comes Robert Burton, who was an English scholar writer. He is the author of The Anatomy of Melancholy, which is a philosophical and a medical treatise. So we have understood and completed the Jacobean to the Caroline period of the English literary history, and the literary period or age that comes next is the neoclassical age. So we'll talk about the title of the next age in detail in the next video. Till then, keep going through the quizzes at the end of each section to make sure that you remember most of the points which are needed for your exam preparation.